What's happening, Sales Ascender? Sean here, and in this video, I'm going to share 8 talking patterns that give away your prospect's intention. This one's going to be a banger. Get ready. What's happening, Sales Ascender? Sean here, back at you with another hot ticket tune-up. I hope you're doing well. It is Thursday, Thirsty Thursday. Let me know in the comments below, what is your drink of choice? Love to hear that stuff and interact with you just a little bit, because this is a conversation more so than anything else. Today, we're going to dive into 8 talking patterns that actually give away anything and everything when it comes to your prospects' intentions. There's 8 things that you should be aware of when it comes to body language. So first thing, what's the first thing we want to look for, right? Interruptive arguments. You're going to see this one all over the news, right? Politicians do this on a daily basis. Our former President Trump was a master at this, right? An entire cabinet of his did this very, very well. It's a technique used to prevent discussion, right? So if you're always consistent, if you ever watch any of the debates, people would continually interrupt, right? And then it doesn't allow the other party to share their point. Same thing in sales, right? When somebody is just consistently interrupting you, they probably don't want to even talk to you, or they have some weird personality that doesn't make sense to keep talking to them. And it doesn't ever provide any clarity, right? So if you're getting into an argument in someone, or not argument, but if you're having a conversation with somebody and they keep interrupting you over and over and over, nobody's going to have clarity at the end of that call. And the only thing that's going to happen is the person that was interrupting is going to feel like they won the conversation, rather argument in their opinion. And you're going to feel slighted because you're like, whoa, I'm frustrated. Like, we didn't even accomplish anything. So this is never a good move. So if you find somebody consistently interrupting you, it's okay to call it out, right? I use the rule of 3. If someone interrupts me 3 times, I'd be like, hey, I know that you've got a lot to say on this stuff, and I've got some pretty important stuff to share as well. Like, could we figure out how to not interrupt each other as we're talking? I just say something very simple like that. And usually it works very effectively, right? People are considerate of other people. And when they realize, some people don't realize that they're interrupting all the time, I just call it out, right? Rule of 3. If this is intended to aggravate or intimidate, as I mentioned, this is some of those things that if you get into, if you're on the wrong side of this, it's going to be really rough sales conversation. And then when you have to go report it back to your company, your team, your leadership, your sales director, whoever you're speaking with, they're going to get frustrated too. So it doesn't make sense, right? The rule there is to call it out after 3 times. If you get interrupted 3 times, call it out, just like I shared. Next, number 2 here, the cathartic utterances. Now, you wouldn't know what a cathartic utterance is. You've probably done one in your life. This is when you say, like when you stub your toe, you're like, shh, but you don't actually finish saying the word, right? So this is the under the breath whisper of a word, right? It's considered nonverbal because it's not actually coming out of the mouth, but typically it helps relieve stress without offending others. So this is a speech pattern that you'll see sometimes when you're watching people on Zoom, when you're having a sales conversation, you're watching your prospect and they say something, but you can't make it out. It's very easy to use tech to your advantage. Be like, hey, did you just say something? I thought my Zoom kind of cut out. Perfect way to call those things out. And if you can get your prospect to share the actual utterance of what they're going to do, here's what happens. They've broken through a layer of vulnerability. You have connected on a rapporting level that's way higher than anything else. But you got to be able to catch it when they're trying to utter something under their breath. Be like, hey, my tech just cut out. Like, what were you just saying? I'm sorry. And they'll say, oh, I was just actually whatever, right? And they'll go into that. When they do that, when you see that, it says, oh yeah, well, it's whatever. That means that now you've broken through that layer of vulnerability and your rapport is going to shoot through the roof with that person. So if you see a cathartic utterance, when somebody's uttering something under your breath, their breath, blame tech, call it out, see if you can get them to repeat it, but actually say the word, and you'll break down into vulnerability land with them and be able to close deals. Next one, speed of talking. When you go out really, really fast and you go like this, you've probably seen the auctioneers, they talk really fast. And then sometimes in certain cultures, people talk a lot slower, a lot more quiet, a lot this way, right? And so this can be a cultural thing, as I just mentioned. Like, some people are very, very slow to reply, especially in certain tribes, in third world countries, whatever. You'll find that when a tribesmen are having a conversation, if you've ever had the privilege of listening to one, they'll ask a question and there'll be this really uncomfortably long delay. And then the speed that they answer the question is almost unbearable for someone coming into that culture, but it's expected there. So it can be cultural. It's an indicator of personality. Typically, people that are going to be speaking faster, if you've ever studied any personality programming, there's, Myers-Briggs Myers-Briggs is one of the first one. We have visual, audio, kinesthetic, and audio digital. There's another system. There's colors. There's disc. There's extended disc. I studied extended disc pretty significantly. And so in my teachings of extended disc and personality selling, when somebody's speaking very, very quickly, it means that they are usually an action taker, and they're usually either task oriented to get the results that they want, or they're very relationshipy. And that's going to put them on the scale of being a dominant person or an influencing style of person. So the faster someone talks, usually an indicator that they're either dominant or influencer. And if you've studied any of that stuff and you know that you're speaking with somebody like that, there's a few certain tips. In fact, I've done some other tune-ups that covered how to sell to dominant personalities, how to sell to influencer style personalities. So go back and catch those other things on the YouTube channel here. But yeah, it could be an indicator of personality, and changes in speed indicate a stress or reluctance. So if you notice the cadence at which your prospect is speaking with you on a consistent basis, and then they speed up their talking, stress or reluctance has entered into their world, whether it's something that you shared with them or something that came in their office or a distraction or something like that. This is a huge nonverbal clue to just listen to the speed or the pace that somebody's speaking. And if they change during a conversation, this is typically the time to call that out. And you can do it very nicely. It's like, hey man, are you really excited about this? Because it seems like you just started speaking really fast. Oh yeah, like I do it as a sales guy all the time. When I start talking about our software, for example, I get so excited about our new software that's actually launching this week. I speak really, really, really quickly because I'm just excited about it, right? So normal conversation, and then I get faster, right? And so when I do it personally, how I stop myself is I say, oh my gosh, I get so excited when I talk about this product because I just love it, and it's the impact that it's making for people is crazy, but I think I'm going too fast. Let me slow down and ask you a question. So that's how I pattern interrupt myself when I'm speaking too fast about excitement, right? Or stress or reluctance. Incessant talking. This is when someone just keeps talking over and over, and then they're not saying very much. And this can typically indicate nervousness. You'll see this most often if you're going to a networking event, prospects are coming in and it's one of their newer events and they're just nervous, right? They just want to talk, because that's a habit that they have that eliminates the nervousness. They can take their mind off being nervous. So that can be one thing. It can indicate inconsiderateness as well, right? If somebody's talking, like you've been to the party, right? In the party, there's the guy in the kitchen who's just jabberjawing about every story that he's ever had and every champion thing he's ever done. And then you go over to the couch and you sit down on the couch and someone's sitting there and they say, hey, how are you doing today? And you just ask a question, right? Which person are you going to be more likely to want to speak with is the person that's asking the question, not the person that's being flamboyant about all of their successes. So it's important to catch yourself on being the one that doesn't talk. A lot of traditional salespeople struggle with this one a tremendous amount. This is why I go back and I mentioned it, I think yesterday, stopwatch, right? If you record one of your sales calls, afterwards, play it back and click and start and stop how much you talk during a conversation. Here's the general guideline for 60-minute conversation. You don't want to talk more than 17 minutes. That's the number, right? So 17 minutes out of 60 minutes, you should be, for the other 43 minutes of the conversation, you should be just firing quick questions at these people and letting them talk and get their story out, because that's how you're going to close the deals the fastest, right? And this can also be caused by shock. Car accident happens, somebody loses their mind, they get out and they're like, and they just can't stop talking, right? It's because it was caused by shock. Okay, all right, here you go. Stuck in a loop, right? Incongruent talking. If somebody is like just incongruently saying things and then they'll like link it to another concept. You see this sometimes with like Alzheimer's, and people are just getting kind of a little crazy. This is a result of stress and emotional overwhelm in the brain. It can be from a genetic disease, or it can be from a situational context. So again, this one is going to be dependent on the context that you're in, also the case or the history that you had with the person that you're speaking with. So if they have a natural tendency to always speak not congruently, and then all of a sudden they change, this is a time to actually question that. And it's okay to question it all the time, right? This can last for hours or even days. Again, this would be like, again, go back to the car accident as an example. They start saying like the grass. All I can remember is the grass. Let's talk about the grass, right? Like where the car crashed. And it can last for hours and even days, and it's okay, but it'll eventually calm itself down. The next one's repetition of words. This one is so powerful. In a sales conversation, if you're the sales pro and you're listening to a prospect and they're talking and they start saying the same words over and over, a couple of reasons. This happens because they get under stress, right? If it's a new environment, they don't want to be pressured to buy something, they might start repeating words, certain times. Your job as a sales professional is to pick up on those words. And you have two choices. You can either slow down the push or the press that you're making, or number two, if it's not in the context where there's stress and it's in the context of like, oh, they just seem to say that word a lot, guess what? That's your key. Use that word in your speech pattern. This is is higher level recognition in a conversation. But if you can see somebody starting to say the same word over and over and over, start using that same word in your speech patterns when you're speaking with them, guess what? You're going to close a lot of deals because like begets like. People buy from like, and people buy from people that they like and trust. And if you're saying the same type of language, you're going to win most of the time. Use the same words when replying. Very simple. And this can sometimes indicate unconscious filters, right? Very important to understand. Again, going back to personality sales, if somebody's visual, they're going to say words like, does that look okay? If they're audio, it's like, how does that sound to you? If they're kinesthetic, it means, yo, how does it feel with you? Is it sitting okay with you? And you can hear the type of language patterns that somebody uses. And it's pretty easy to understand visual, auditory, or kinesthetic. Do they speak with eye language? Do they speak with ear language? Or do they speak with feeling language? And when you can determine that in a conversation, what you need to do to truly stay in rapport with somebody is to speak in that same filter if you can figure it out. That's why I always use visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, and I always use DISC. And those are my two filters that I put together and I have every conversation with. And it's taken years to get to a place where I have like some semblance of understanding of both of these things. So just choose the first thing you hear. Don't try to go deep into this. If somebody says the word, how does that look? Or I see what you're saying. Just listen for catchphrases like that and then start using those same catchphrases and you'll be perfect, right? Next one, last couple here. Speed of response. When somebody asks you a question, how quickly do they respond to you? What does this mean in a sales context? Well, it informs you on their thought patterns, right? Their thought patterns, like the way that they may process information, right? So it's the way that they typically would speak in a certain way or the way that they process information. This gives you data and intel and how to go about selling with them. Understand that you as the sales professional need to have a little bit more patience when somebody is responding slower. You need to just check yourself and respond in the same temperament, right? I always talk about, the connection and the bond and the rapport part of the sales conversation. You have to hold rapport the whole conversation. It's your job as a sales professional. The way to do this is to mirror and match the inflection, the speed, the volume that somebody speaks with you. And typically you just have to do this for the first 90 seconds of the conversation and you can go back to your normal style because by then they would have locked in there. They say something like, oh my gosh, this person speaks in my filter. So it's all good, right? This can also depend on cultural context and mental agility. So if somebody is a little bit slower upstairs, they may take a little bit longer to respond as well. Okay, and the last one here is speeding through comments, right? What do I mean by this? Well, fast is not always good. So for example, if somebody said, hey, I'm sorry, and then just moved on, you're going to be like, well, that wasn't sincere and that sucks. Or same thing with the welcome. Hey, welcome to the panel. And then, hey, welcome. And then they bomb out. Like, no, that's not good, right? So we need to, again, be focused on like context is, again, a big part of this one, but it indicates social anxiety, reluctance, or lack of conviction. One thing that I'll share with you here is somebody once asked me, they said, Sean, what is the number one trait for being a sales professional? Or if there's one thing you could bucket into, like what's a good sales professional? What's one trait that makes a good sales professional? And I always say the answer is not one, there's three. So the first one's conviction, the second one's persistence, and the third one is consistence, right? And so conviction or lack of conviction, if you can create conviction about what you're saying, what you're selling, you're going to be so much better off. And if you're not convicted about the stuff that you're selling personally, figure out why. Write it down on a piece of paper and figure out why you're not convicted about your solution, your product, your service that you offer, and get yourself sold on it. Because if you get yourself sold on it first, you'll be able to sell other people. So simple to do. And in this particular context, when we're talking about speeding through comments, when somebody is just and you usually will see it with a prospect that's newer or green into the space, and they'll put their head down, right? And their eyes will go down, right? And so it's always the body language you got to watch, but then they'll say, oh, I'm good. And they'll just speed through the response there or speed through the comment that they're saying. This is totally a lack of conviction. So your job as a sales professional when that happens is to breathe life back into that person and get them to have a great day. And with this said, I hope this one has made your day great today. There's an amazing sales ascender inside of each and every one of you. And don't forget, smash that like button, hit the subscribe to the channel. And I am really, really looking forward to seeing you next time. Talk soon.